Hi.
There we go. All right. I want to thank you all for having me here this evening. I'm looking forward to this. Actually did some prep, so we'll see how it goes. Um, what is sequencing? All right, silly, but if we're starting at the very basics, it's just a process where you apply xLights effects to one or more props. It can be musical, that is, you're synchronizing it to some sort of music or sound, or it could be an animation where you have no sound background, just little twinkly lights or whatever you want to do. So that's basically what we're talking about. All right, so I'm going to run down real quick just the very basics of how to start a new sequence. I'm going to assume a couple of things. One, that you already set up your display, and that you at least have some familiarity with xLights. All right, so how do you start a new sequence? Well, you go up to the top menu and you do File and New, and then you'll select the type. If you select a musical, it's going to take you to a browser, and you can browse and select the song. It will load that, create a waveform as a result of that. Again, animation will default to 30 seconds. You can adjust that by going up to File, Sequence, Settings, and then adjusting the length of it there. Frame rate, there's two general options, or three, I should say. There's a 20 and a 40 frames per second, and then there's also a custom. I generally recommend people use 40 unless they have some very unusual circumstances. For example, if you've got a really large building or large display, and you've got some effects that are going to go across that whole display. You may think of using a faster frame rate if your hardware supports it. Of course, you can select anything you want, but it's kind of the weakest link thing. No matter what your frame rate, if your hardware is not set up, or you have too many pixels on a port that won't support it, you're just not going to get the higher frame rate no matter what you put in there. I generally recommend 40 simply because for me, when I'm doing lyric tracks, it makes it a whole lot easier to line up, line up the phonemes and things like that. All right. I want to talk about timing marks, and I think timing marks are really, really important, at least for me, and they are important for me because I don't have any musical talent. Uh, when you see somebody like Tom George and he does sequencing, um, he's not as heavily reliant upon timing marks as I am. And the reason why is because, well, he's got talent. I don't. I'm more of a technician in a lot of ways, but that translates really well to all the analytical folks that are attracted to this hobby. All right, so you can do it manually. You've got the waveform that sits across the top of the sequence tab. And you can go in there. Usually, if I am doing them manually, I will put on a set of wired headphones. Do not use Bluetooth. There is a timing delay that will throw off your entire sequence. So, wired headphones, you'll be surprised what you hear through headphones that you don't hear through your computer speakers. Um, and of course, there are some automated ways to apply timing marks. If you will go to xLights, go to the download there, and you can actually get the install for the Queen Mary Vamp plugins if you're using Windows, and you can get it there at the releases page, and it's right kind of, I want to say, probably at about 30% of the way down the screen when you first go there. All right, then what you're going to do is you're going to apply effects to props. Generally, what I'll do is I'll drag and drop to the timing marks. Your timing marks are so critical. Think of them as the timing marks themselves are just the hooks that you're going to hang your effects on. And after you put the effect in, what you're going to do is you're going to fine tune it. Now, when you first start xLights, there's the default, there's several windows that pop up. The ones that I have listed here are the ones that I use on a regular basis. The others, if I need them, I'll load them up. But the way an analogy I try to give people is think of this as your workspace. And you're going to be more efficient if your workspace is clean. So I've boiled this down to the bare minimum. These are the ones that you really need to effectively sequence. There are some, like the effect assist and the ones that help you locate effects and things like that. You just call them up as you need them. But the effect settings, the color, the layer settings, the layer blending, model preview, house preview, and all the others I close. And so I try to keep my work area pretty clean when I'm working. All right, when we get into kind of, what my process is and what I do it, I got to talk about song selection. To me, it's a very critical element. I've got a music subscription. There are other hobbyists. There's customers that make suggestions. One of the things I ask people when they check out with us, hey, what do you want us to sequence? And I compile that list. Right now, it's 12 pages long. And things work their way up or down the list as I go along. But for me to do a really good job, I have to connect to the song in some way, either through the lyrics, the message of the song, or the music itself. And what I found is that if I have a connection to the music, it makes it a whole lot easier to sequence. Now, this is one of those TMI things, but when I consider doing a song, the first thing I do is I start listening to it. The reason why is because I am trying to see if the song will in some way create images in my mind, knowing the constraints of my layout and things like that. What do I see happening? And I will listen to it over and over and over again, leading up to me actually starting on it. I'll probably listen to a song, 20, 30 times before I ever sit down to start sequencing. Now, I don't do it, just sit there, do it constantly. I got a Bluetooth speaker in the shower. I'll listen to it while I'm showering. I take a walk every morning. I'll play it while I'm walking. I don't sit there and pound it into my head, but I do pay a lot of attention to it. So once I've got that connection, it makes sequencing a whole lot easier. That's one of the, I think, limitations or difficulties of doing commercial sequencing, where somebody comes to you and says, hey, I've got to drive through. I want you to sequence this song. Well, I may not have any connection to that song in any way. And in those regards, you have to really just power through it and try to find some connection, some way to make it meaningful to me. All right, so that's a little bit of my process. Now, I always talk about right brain versus left brain, but I think it's very, very important. Hobby attracts left brain people, analytical folks, and sequencing is very much a right brain activity. If you go look at the questions that are in the various Facebook groups and on the forums and things like that, the vast majority of them are technical. I mean, granted, it is a very technical hobby. And I think the people that are left brain prefer that type of problem solving. In other words, it makes sense to them because there are bound parameters, there are rules, there are charts that you could go reference, things like that. So sequencing is just the opposite. It's very much a right brain activity. Now, people who are right-brained can do left-brained activities. People who are left-brained can do right-brain activities. But one of the things you have to do is overcome your natural propensity for the way that you look at things. And what I mean by that is you've got to trick your brain into sequencing. In other words, if problem solving, if you're analytical, if you like problem solving, you know, you're good at math, your controller builds are perfect, you know, your wires are neat lines. You know, mine usually look like colored spaghetti, but it still works. So what you've got to do is you've got to find a way to attack sequencing so that it makes sense to the way you process information. And the one that I always talk about, and I think it's very good for the left brain people, is to approach it as problem solving. That's all you're doing is you are solving problems. You're not trying to be creative. Because the minute I talk about using your imagination and being creative, they're like, oh, I don't like that. I can't do it. Not sure what to do. Okay, but just approach it as you are going to solve a problem. All you're doing is you're making xLights do what you want it to do. And the effects are the tools in your toolbox. And you have to know how to use them. There are videos out there, I mean, gazillions of videos out there showing you how to do it. Believe it or not, even though it's not always up to date, the xLights manual that's available off of xlights.org, it's on the main page there, click on that, has good information about the effects. But here's the one that generally keeps people from doing how do I say it, jumping right in there, is it takes time in the seat. What I mean by that is, you know, for me, for example, I split my sequencing up into 2 4 to 6 hour sessions a day. I wake up stupidly early, don't know why, but I'll wake up like 4 o'clock and I'll put in at least 4 to 6 hours in the morning, and then I'll do normal people stuff for a little bit, and then I'll try to sit back down, you know, 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and give it at least another 4 hours. And a lot of the time in the seat is, you know, I'll know I want to do something, but I'm not sure how to make it do that. So I will start playing with the effects, and I'll be honest with you, sometimes I will sit there and I will spend an hour, maybe 2 hours, and then come to the conclusion that either it's not possible to do what I want it to do, or my skill set's not there yet. You know, I'm not exactly sure how to do it. And so I might spend 2 hours trying to do something and then give up on it. But time in the seat is critical, because what it does is it helps you get to know those tools that are in your toolbox. One of the things that I love about xLights, and you can see this anytime anybody answers a question, you know, how do I do this? How do I make it do this on my prop? And sometimes you will get 2 or 3 reasonable answers. And the reason why is because xLights is just feature rich. And you can do the same thing with, you know, the bar effect that you can do sometimes with the single line effect, depending on the prop and what you're trying to do. Is there a, you know, best way to do it? I'm sure there are for certain reasons. Sometimes it's stuff we don't even see. For example, I learned recently that the single strand, single line effect is just one of the from a rendering perspective, from a programmer perspective, it's one of the worst ones out there. You know, they just don't like it. It's not efficient, et cetera, and so forth. All right, so is there a good way to do it? Yeah. What's the best way? Well, it depends on the situation. But I always say light shows and pizza are the same, and people are very forgiving. Light shows and pizza, even the bad ones are pretty good. So just remember that, and don't beat yourself up. Did I do this the most efficient way that I could? Now let me give you an example of some of the problems. Now bear with me. I'm never very successful with switching screens here. So I'm going to try this. Do a new share. So far, still good. Okay, that's pretty ugly. There it goes. My screen finally refreshed. Okay, this is just a sequence I did. It's a redo I did of Music Box Dancer. It's an old, dubstep type. Let me go up here. I'm going to go to the audio right away, and I'm going to put it on silent so we do not invoke the wrath of the copyright gods. One of the things I wanted to show you when we talk about timing marks and things like that. This one is, let me zoom in here. All right, see the timing marks, I've got them on the left. The one that I always start with is structure. Now the structure only has meaning to me for the most part. And what I do when I sit there and listen to the sequence, I will go ahead and I'll enter in, where I think the transitions are going to be. In other words, where am I going to start changing effects? Where are there going to be effects that are different? And so I'll put in a timing mark. Now, these are kind of fungible. What I mean by that is I'll put them in on the first listen through, but as I go through sequencing, I may adjust it, adding more, deleting, moving them to the, to the left, right, that sort of thing. But if you look there, the only one out of that group that is automated from the Queen Mary vamp is the beats. Everything else is manually entered. The drums, the piano, that sort of thing. It's all manually entered in. So I meant to show you that earlier on the timing marks. Let me get back to my other part here and get back on track on my thoughts. All right, now let me call up a different sequence. And I'll show you what I mean by problem solving. This little song I put together, it's more of an opening than anything else. It's not a full sequence. It's only a little. Let me see what it is. It's a little over a minute 15, almost a minute 18. Makes a great intro. But I pondered over this one for a long time. And the reason why is because I wanted it to be very Disney-like. In other words, I wanted it to be like, the Wonderful World of Disney that used to come on Sunday night when I was a kid. And, Tinkerbell would come out and fly around and, she'd use her little magic wand and, sprinkle fairy dust, that sort of thing. That's what I was going for. That's what I was hoping to do. And my initial thought was that, I would have a series of fairies that would come out of my star, the Bethlehem star that I've got there, the starburst that's kind of at about 60% across the screen from the left. I'd have a series of fairies that would come out, and as the fairy would go across, it would, little fairy dust would drop in, and the fairy would touch the prop with its wand, and as I got to doing this, what I realized was that, well, that would be fine if the whole thing were just a big video screen, but with the pixel density that I had, it ended up looking like soup. There was, too much going on, just didn't work at all. And so I had to come up with a different way to do it. And so what I did was I came up with a series of just, I'm gonna grow this. And you can see it there. It's better with sound, but it's still pretty without sound. And what I did was I came up with a series of effects. It's a line effect followed by a twinkle effect that lets me turn on the prop. And the different movements. Actually, they were string movements within the music itself. Those different string movements are where I started things, and so I had to work all of this out because I had never done it before.
Michael, are you hiding the house preview?
Yes, I am. I never know what it's showing. Hang on, let me
That's
scoot
all
it
right.
over. I scoot it over here, and I'll back it up a little bit. Don't have to go all the way. It'll go right here. But what I was doing was, again, just I would highlight something, follow it with a twinkle effect, uh, and just keyed those to the string movements that were in the piece. All right, like I said, all this stuff that I'm showing you right now, that you see it happening, I've done variations of it, but never fully in the context like I did here. So it was just a series of problem solving. This is what I want it to do. How am I going to make it do that? And let me go ahead and I will stop that. But that's an example of where, I just have a concept. And you might say, well, where do you get these concepts? Where do you think of it? Well, like I said, when I was probably 7, 8 years old, we'd sit there on Sunday night and watch Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, and that was followed immediately by Disney, right? And so I'm pulling back from, way, way back to get my inspiration. So for you, where do you get your inspiration? Well, look at other people's work. There's absolutely nothing wrong with copying what somebody has done, unless you're a commercial sequencer, right? But as long as you are, just doing stuff for yourself, go and look what other people have done with the song, come up with ideas. That can be the source of your inspiration. And then again, then all you're doing then is you are just going back to problem solving. All right, let me get back to my slides here. Now, as I said, there are compromises that you're going to encounter. For me, I encountered, a pixel density issue on how much I could actually do. I think the skill level was there, but like I said, unless I was using just a huge P5 or P10 panel across the whole house, it just turned into a mess when I was trying to accomplish what I had originally envisioned. All right, so the timing marks, I showed you those. I want to show you a tool that I use that has been very useful, very helpful. It's Moises.ai is where you'll find it. Let me get that share going for you. All right, this is the Music Box Dancer, and remember I said I put those effects in manually. Well, I did have the help of this, and what this program does, is it will split out a song into various components, and when you start it, you actually have the opportunity to choose what it's being split out into. Now, there's a free version of the program that will give you a limited set of what you can do. The advanced program has some more features that will let you do different split outs. But let me give you some idea of, this won't violate any copyright, but I'll give you an example of what it actually sounds like. Okay, this, when I break out the drums and we break into kind of the dubstep area, I'm going to play this for you. Okay, so I hope you could hear that. Could you all hear that?
Yes, we could.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so when I break that out, what I do is I'll export it as an MP3, and I will export it down. And then what I will do, I will go into xLights. Let me share back over to that, and I'll show you where I do it. All right, so then what I will do is I will go into xLights, the sequence settings, and I will go to where I keep my audio files. Okay, and I'll pull out the drums. Oop, got the wrong sequence. Hang on. Get Music Box Dancer up here again. You get to see me do it twice. Just make sure if I do it the same. Now that makes a little more sense. Okay, and you will see here that when I put that in there, I just went through and I could manually put in the drum beats that I wanted to use. That and when you're talking a fast song like Music Box Dancer, I mean it's dubstep, but you know sometimes they're like 120 beats per second. I mean per minute, and so you know you're talking like twice per second. It's really hard when you're sitting there and have all the other instruments going to isolate just the drums. So for me, this tool has been very, very beneficial. I pay the monthly subscription. It's $3.99 to get the advanced features. So you know, to me, it is well worth what's there. So timing marks are my answer to not having any musical talent whatsoever. And like I said, it really does help people like me. All right, so let's talk about sequencing more. Color palette. One of the things you have to remember is that color communicates emotion. And what a sequence should do is help the song tell its story. Constant color change, and you see this sometimes, and you know, if that's what you want to do, that's great. I consider that an artistic choice. Just maybe not the best one, but it's your choice. But what constant color change does, it interferes with your audience's emotional connection to the sequence. And it's not anything that anyone can put their finger on. But I have time and time again had people tell me, you know, I like your sequences because it seems like my audience really connects with it. Well, one of the reasons why is because I sit there and I will think about the song and what it's trying to communicate, and I will create a color palette that goes along with the story so that it tells the song story more effectively. At least in my opinion, it does. All right, so that's something that I don't always see. I think more and more people are starting to use color palettes. If you're not sure what color to use, you know, listen to a song and write down the emotion that it gives you, the thought, the feeling. And then there are all kinds of charts all over the internet that will tell you what colors communicate that. And so, you know, that's something I think you should do. And one of the nice things about that is it forces you to actually sequence instead of just changing color, to make it look different. People always ask me, where do you start? And I will tell you, I always start with what I call constrained props. Now, what's a constrained prop? Well, if it has a limited number of options, things that you can put on it, I consider that to be a constrained prop. Good example is arches. Now contrast that to something like a matrix or a mega tree. There's an unlimited number of options available there. And so for me, when I get started, I like to use the arches to help capture the beat or the rhythm, or sometimes certain instruments, and tie it to an instrument. But anyway, so I say it's limited. Yeah, you can do all sorts of things with an arch, but putting a video on it is not going to be as effective as it would be putting a video on a matrix. I mean, you can, but like I said, it's just not going to be a good use of that video on an arch as opposed to, as it would be on a matrix. So start with a constrained prop and build off of that. What I will do with the arches, I will take the arches from beginning to end. I don't always sequence that way, but I will with the arches or the constrained prop that I'm using. Now, the exception for me anyway is when I have a clear vision for the prop. For example, a few years back, the Gwen Stefani, Blake Shelton song, "You Make It Feel Like Christmas," I had a clear vision of what I wanted on my mega tree. And I wasn't going to stop until I got that nailed down exactly the way I wanted it. And so I went to that prop first and I sequenced it first. But 99% of the time, I'm not going to do that, like I said, unless there is a very, very clear vision. All right, now 2 ways to sequence. Do you take a single prop all the way through? I will tell you it's very efficient. But on the downside is sometimes, you lose the mood of that section. And I found that if I will do it section by section, if I do it prop by prop, a lot of times I will end up going back and changing it in a section to make it match better. So ultimately, for me, it becomes less efficient because of the changes that I go back. The second way, of course, is section by section. Remember when I said I do those, what I call the song structure, which is basically, this section, I'm going to do one thing. Over here, I'm going to do another thing. Now, let me get back over to xLights here. And I'm going to zoom out and get back to my sections. Now, a general good rule of thumb is that when you have a fast-paced song, a lot of times you don't need transitions. In other words, a straight cutover will look just as good. Now, there are times where you're going to need to put in a transition. And I always save my transitions until the end, and I'll show you why. Because what I'll do is I will come in here and I will highlight every prop that's going to end there. And I will come over to the out transition here, and I'm going to bulk edit it and select the effect and the time. And what that does is it gives the sequence tremendous consistency because I'm using, where I've identified a transition where I clearly have props that are have effects that are transitioning, and I'll add that transition at the end. And it's just an efficient way rather than adding the prop, coming over and adding in the out transition. I will do the same thing on end transitions. I don't have a lot of them here because it's a fast-paced song, but I will highlight multiples, and sometimes I will go all the way through all the props and do that. Okay, now let me switch over. Let me get back to my other screen. Okay, so with the transitions, what I will do is I will structure and bulk edit, as I said. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about flourishes. It's a little hard to talk about them without playing the music, but I'm going to do that. One of the things that people like is when your effects are tied to the music. A lot of music, modern music, will have flourishes, but they're different than what I call the classical period of Christmas music. You know, the classics, when we're talking the 50s, the 60s, you know, Dean Martin, Bing Crosby, Burl Ives, you know, all those songs that we grew up with in the 60s. If you listen to the music, it's very instrumental, and there's a lot of little flourishes that are in there. You know, little flutes, sometimes just bells tingling, you know, chimes, whatever. And one of the things that I will do is go through and identify what I call flourishes, and I will go back in and I will add those in. A lot of times, these will be like whole house effects, where I've got a shock wave going across, or using a morph, or things like that, where it highlights that little flourish. And what it does for your audience is it adds a bit of polish to it. In other words, it shows that you are sequencing to the music itself. And I just do it at the end because it's what I've always done. It just makes it easier to do that for me, just to do them all at once, and it helps you make consistent decisions as you go across. All right, now I'll talk a little bit about 3D sequencing. We have 2D sequencing. We're doing X and Y. 3D, obviously you have X, Y, and the Z axis. Now, I generally don't sequence my store layout in 3D simply because if you think about it, on a prop, everybody's X and Y is the same. But the Z is always going to be different. So for me to, you know, sequence to the Z, the only reason I would do it is if I had a deeper layout where I had more overlapping props. So what do you do it for? Well, large layouts. I will tell you, a lot of people who do drive-throughs on the commercial side, they will do their entire drive-through in a 3D layout. And I hate sequencing that, simply because the 3D just adds time, adds render time, adds you know, navigation time, and ultimately it ends up costing the person who has the drive-through, it ends up costing them more money to have things sequenced. If you have a deep layout, like I said, overlapping props, you may want your view to come up so that you're looking down and can see all the props. If you have multiple viewing positions, for example, you live on a corner lot, and if you have three-dimensional props. Now, this is one I've been playing with. I just thought I'd share it with you. All right. This time I will actually bring it over for you. Okay, what you're looking at, don't know what happened there. All right, what you're looking at there are the actual 3D props that I did this with. These are fireworks props, and I didn't sequence to what you see here at all. I sequenced to these shadow models here, down at the bottom. I'll show you kind of what this looks like. And I left the shadow models on there because it's kind of funny to watch what they do compared to what you see on Okay, when you're in 3D, of course, one of the nice things you can do is you can move around. And look at things from different angles, that sort of stuff. So I'm going to stop that. Move it out of the way. Get back to our slides here. Now, when you're talking about 3D, a lot of what you see as far as the 3D goes, it's setting it up. A lot of people will use hover application, or hover, I don't know how to pronounce it. Learning how to position props. You've got to learn how to manipulate the X and the Y axis. Prop sizing, going in, setting a ruler. Those are all problems. But they're really just getting you ready for actually sequencing. Now, the sequencing impact on the 3D sequencing impact, I guess one of the best things about it is that you can create a viewpoint. And then when you create the viewpoint, you can go ahead and manipulate the buffer. And let me get into this a little bit. Now, these props are not ideal ones to use. The fireworks, so I'm just going to call up this one. And I'm going to go to the layout and I'll switch it over to 3D. Okay, mine is actually flat. If you turn it around here and look at it, I've never set up my Z-axis on anything. So it all lines up nice and even right there in the center, except for the piece stakes. And they're 3D, and I went in and manipulated them 3D. Never really worried about changing their position because I knew they'd always be in 2D. Okay, so when you're in 3D, one of the things you can do is you can go in and change how people look at it. Let's go up here. And I'm going to right click, and what I'm going to do is save the current viewpoint. And I'm going to save it as left upper. Okay, that's the viewpoint. All right, and I'm just going to save that. And then in the sequencer, say if I were to put an effect on that, I can go over to the layer settings because we're going to manipulate the buffer, and I'm going to change it to per preview, and I'm going to change the camera to left upper. And what it will do is it will now apply that effect from that perspective. And this is really handy when you have a lot of depth in your layout. With mine, it wouldn't make much difference because like I said, I'm basically a flat 2D layout. But if I actually had the layering, what that would do is it would change the way that it's rendered so that the depth is captured. And that's very useful, for example, if let's say you've got a roof line where you have some lines that if you're looking straight on, you're not going to see anything. But if you come at it at an angle and render it from that viewpoint, you're actually going to get something rather than just a solid color on that line that goes backwards, that goes straight back. So when it comes to 3D, that's probably the biggest impact that the 3D has on sequencing, other than it just looks cool. I mean, can't argue with that. You can see that with the fireworks. Yeah, it looked cool. All right, so let me get it out of 3D. Save it back. Now, one of the things that they asked me to talk about was the keyboard shortcuts. And if you will, when you talk about the shortcuts, I'm going to show this to you. Let me see if I can hold it up where you can see it. Some of you are going to recognize that. Okay, that is a mouse pad that I got at Expo when it was held in Mesquite, Texas. And it's got every little keyboard shortcut on there that is built into xLights. Somebody said, "Hey, got one." Somebody else is lucky. I should sell screenshots of that. Just might make Ed mad though, so I'm not going to do it. All right, so let me get back to my screen sharing so you don't have to look at me. My forehead and the glare can actually blind you if I go like 3 minutes, so I don't want to do that. All right, so what you can do, and let me get you a share here. If you want to know what they are, share that one. You may not realize it, but if you go up here to File and Key Bindings, the defaults that are built into xLights are there. The effect ones are easy to remember because most of them are pretty logical. So you can memorize those. If you don't want to memorize them, just make yourself a Post-it, and post it. Yeah, they're a great way to do it. You can go in while you're sequencing. Let me get over here, close that. Okay, and you just select an area, and let's just say you want the on command. You just hit O, and now you have the on command. Okay, it's a quick way to do things. Some people like it. I've never bought into it too much just because I don't really like it. What I will use more often, and this is good to know. That's a new feature I've discovered in Zoom. I don't know where it comes from, but yeah. All I want is you to do that. Okay, so what I'm more likely to do to speed up my sequencing, if you will pull the effect from this row right here, it will come in with the default settings. But if you, let's say I'm going to select this one over here. Okay, and okay, so I've got 6 arms, size is set to 400, thickness is at 100, speed is at 10. It's set to go clockwise. It's 3D. Okay, if I will grab this with my left click and drag it in, it retains the features that were just there. So in other words, rather than having to do a copy and paste, I can just drag this in. And for me, that saves a lot of time because I don't have to go back in and reset these parameters in the dialogue itself. All right, so let me get back to this one. And that's all I've got for you tonight. I hope by taking you through the process of what I go through that you can pick up a piece here or there that is useful to you. I think ultimately you'll find that the way that you sequence is the way that you're comfortable doing it, and but you can pick up tidbits from every person that you watch their video and watch how they do it. All right. So any questions?
So everybody knows how to program now.
Yeah, everybody's good at sequencing. No, it's all good. I mean, it's a lot to absorb. I get it.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. Take a group of pixels and I want to turn that group of pixels on and off as if they were blinking. I've tied the single strand and a few other things, and I really cannot get it to actually blink. Any ideas?
What are you getting at? Is there anything that you want it to blink to?
Not necessarily, but if I need to tie it to something like a timing track, I could do that.
All right. Just do this. Put the pixels that you want on your single strand. Go ahead and put it in. And I'm terrible about the exact wording on this. Let me get to it here and I'll show you. Let me just.
I mean, obviously you can do an on effect, off effect, on effect, off effect like that, but
Okay, let's say, and I'm going to add in, this is a sequence, and this is just an animation. Let me pick something that'll work well with that. Let me pick an arch because it's a nice straight line. Okay, I'm going to add a layer, right? And let me add a timing mark here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in a single strand. And I'm going to go to the skips. And I'm going to pick my colors. Let's just do white, red, and green. We're going to do the band 1 with a skip of 1. Okay, I'm going to leave the number of advances at 0. And let me add my timing track in here. I'm just going to add in a metronome. We'll do it on quarter seconds like that. And that way I can tie this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in just the VU meter, something that's going to give me an off and on. And I'm going to tie that. I'm going to change it to timing event pulse color. I'm going to use white, and I'm going to change this to a black. Well, actually, what I'm going to change it to is kind of an dark blue. because, you know, black is transparent. Don't want it to do anything. Let me see if that gives us what we want. So I'm going to change the layer blending to 2 as a true unmask. Model preview. I don't know what we'll get. Might have to adjust it. Render that. Make sure that's not my issue. Okay, I'm not getting anything there. Two is a true unmask. Let me swap those.
I don't think he actually selected the dark blue color on the VU meter.
Oh yeah, that may be part of the problem. Um, let me move back down and see if it helps. Okay, no, still not getting what we want. So I changed that to 1 is a true unmask. I know where my problem is. Hang on a second. The reason why I'm getting I've needed to change it to the metronome. Okay, so now I'm getting the flashing, but I'm not getting the colors that I want. Well, I am because I had them unselected. Now I've got the colors. Okay, so that's how you would do it. That's one way. If you would, you know, flip these, then you could do 2 as a true unmask. I don't know if you can see that it's actually flashing every quarter second. Does that help you?
Yeah, I'll have to experiment with that.
That's what I do. Like I said, it's time in the seat. You know, and just remember this: if you get something that you think you're going to use a lot, and it took you a little time to put it together, make it a preset so you can find it, so you can use it easier later on.
Absolutely. Okay, that gives me something to look at tomorrow, the next day.
Okay, anything else?
If somebody gets really good at this, could they like be hired to like sequence for people?
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking for independent contractors right now.
Huh.
They don't have to be really good; they just have to be willing to learn.
Yeah, there's a number of commercial sequencers out there that are hiring on, including him.
I'll tell you something that's crazy. I work for PPD and for Tom Bedgeorge.
What?
Yeah.
No way.
Yep. Clyde has been a great mentor for me, and you know, Tom is just amazing. Some of the stuff he does with so little.
I got one for you. When you're sequencing onto a mega tree, and my biggest problem is knowing what of the how to place each one of those items below each other so that one doesn't cancel out the other one, or knowing the ones that do cancel out that you can't use on that product. What's the best way? I mean, I know, you know, it's pick and choose and learn, something like that.
Here's
But
what I will tell you the best way to do it, and it's the simplest way. Let me add some layers here. And since you said mega tree, we'll just pull that model up, hopefully.
I mean, I've seen some really impressive lead-ins where it comes from the side, then goes straight up. I mean, there's a lot of difference, but I mean, to do something like that, you got to understand.
Yeah, but see, it's not really that hard. The best way to think of it, and the easiest way to do it, is you're going to build layers. All right. And so I'm going to start, let's say right here, I'm just going to start with this layer. Let me put a horizontal and a vertical fade on it. And let me eliminate the vertical. So now we've got kind of a horizontal. Let me get a color that shows up a little better. Maybe that one. Maybe red. Red will show up. Can you all see the red? I don't know.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we've got red on here, right? And that's my first layer. All right. So now, if I'm going to build over that, I've got to make a decision. Do I want that layer, that one, to show through, or do what I'm putting next? Is it going to be? Is it going to be just a base? So if I want it to be just a base and the next layer to show over it, I'm going to put on here, just go up and I'm going to make it layered. All right, let me come down here next and I'm going to put in some snowflakes.
Okay.
And I'm going to make them white and I'm going to change it to the mixture. I'm going to increase the quantity and increase the speed. Okay, so now I've got that in there. Now let me bring in, say, an image. Browse. I'm going to bring in an image. I'm going to scale it to fit. Maybe. There it is. Okay, I got a little snowman in there. Okay, you'll see now, okay, my snow, since I have it on normal, the snow is going in front of the snowman. Okay, which looks like a normal thing that you would see in a winter scene, right?
Right.
Okay, but I can change that real easy just by coming down and making the snow layered. Now the snow goes behind the character.
So it wouldn't be one unmasked on two or two on one.
Now, you know, when you're learning how to do this, just start with, okay, I'm going to build a picture. How does this picture come together? You know, start with the back and work to the front.
Okay, that makes sense. Listen, I just had a lot of issues trying to understand, you know, because if you got 6 layers and you go to where you have the where you do have the layer and you say 2 shadows on one or what have you, how do you know which one is one if you have 8 different layers? Or which one?
Well, sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I don't care. I look at how it looks.
Okay.
I mean, truthfully, and if it's what I'm doing, I don't get into that type of analysis. I just kind of base it on the way that it looks, and just kind of let xLights do its magic in the background.
Gotcha.
So, in other words, to understand all this and think about it every time, it can very quickly be overwhelming. But that's a very analytical way of looking at it. Is hey, I want to understand how this works, and sometimes just the end result is enough to make it good for you. You know, you can apply certain things. Let me show you. This will be kind of a little bit of a different thing, and I can show you. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in here a pinwheel effect. Let me adjust it a little bit. I'm going to go to 6, and I'm going to increase the size. I'm going to put a little bit of a twist in there. I'm going to make it thick. Pick up the speed a little bit. I'm going to make it 3D. All right. Let's see what that gives us right now. All right. So that's it in the front. Okay. Because it's on normal.
Uh-huh.
But if I change that to average, okay, now you can see that it's affecting everything underneath it. So let's say I wanted to make it to where these, to where it's just affecting the tree color and not anything else. All right, so what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to try this a couple of different ways. Let me just take them all and move them down so I can manipulate them. And I'm just using the arrow up and down to move them. Okay, and let me move this up. And I'm going to move this up. But because I have it layered, my snowflakes are going away. So I'm going to take those to normal. Okay, so what you're trying to accomplish will affect the order and sometimes the layer setting. But
Okay.
again, it's just time in the seat. You know, the more you do it, the more you understand, and you know, you get better at manipulating things. And what's really funny is, you know, I don't get too occupied with, you know, the how. You know, how does it happen? Just what's the end result? What am I looking at? Now, the more you understand it, the easier it gets to manipulate it, obviously. But, you know, it's okay to just try things and see how it turns out.
Okay, so you pretty much put each layer and just make it a layer and then manipulate it as you go along on that one layer on how it's going to reflect back
Right.
to the overall picture.
Exactly. Let me give you an example here. Okay, right now I've got the snow going above the snowman.
Uh-huh.
Let me just move him up one. Now just by moving him up, I didn't change any settings, but by moving him up, now the snow goes behind him.
Okay, I see. Okay, that helps me a lot. I appreciate it.
Sure.
May I say something?
Yeah.
Okay. Something that a lot of people don't realize is that layering is actually a legacy thing from almost back to xLights version 1. And it's never changed. You can have 50 layer 1s, but underneath each one of those layer 1s is actually layer 2. And it never got expanded out any further than layer 1 and layer 2. If you go to actually here to layer 2, then underneath that will become layer 1, and underneath it will be layer 2. And it goes down the scale that way. And a lot of people get confused because that's not really explained anywhere really well.
I get confused with that. That's why I asked, you know, how do you know what layer 1 and layer 2 was?
Layer 1 is always on top of layer 2. That's the key. Even if you're down at layer 45, That is layer 1, and layer 46 will be layer 2.
Oh, okay, so it does not chronicle, know what I'm trying to say. You know, the first layer, 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are not really how they come in order. It's how you put that shadow on layer 1 with below it, and that would be at layer 45, 46, or 32 and 33.
I think you're starting to get it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you. A lot more.
I will bow out. I just thought I would throw that 2 cents because it goes back to really a long ways back in xLights, and they never made a change to do it like layer 1 affects layer 16 or anything like that. So you just kind of have to go down the stair steps until you get to the till you get to the 2 layers that you want to affect each other. Now the averaging and all that averages across all the layers, as he said, but the layer 1 and layer 2 does confuse a lot of people.
That's where the canvas mode comes in, where you can pick and choose your layers.
And mess with that much, Daryl.
Not many have. It's pretty obscure. I don't know, Michael, do you play with canvas mode at all?
No, I
It's
don't.
it's pretty wacky.
Okay, anybody else have any questions for Michael? If not, Michael, I want to say thank you. It's been a great presentation. Always learn every time you're on, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you for the explanation you gave me.
No problem.